Earth was quiet that night, a deep, grieving quiet. People gathered in small clusters, heads bowed, shoulders hunched, not in conversation but in collective mourning. News had spread with a fierce, unforgiving speed. A child was dead, a child, one of their own, lost in a sudden, senseless flash. And the world had no answers. Only the cold, brutal fact: the Galactic Council had struck, with no warning, no explanation, leaving Earth with only questions and grief. In the center of a city, a mother stood motionless, her face streaked with dried tears, clutching the child's favorite toy close to her chest. Beside her, neighbors stood in solidarity, hands on her shoulders, but no one spoke. Their silence was a language of its own, a language of unity, of sorrow, of shared anger and heartbreak. People had thought they understood what it meant to feel rage, but this was something new. It was a fury so profound, so silent, it felt like it could shatter the very fabric of the universe. From high above, the Galactic Council watched. To them, Earth was nothing but a remote dot, a civilization so primitive it didn't even merit a second glance. What did it matter if a life was lost on that insignificant blue planet? The Council, with its vast interstellar empire, couldn't comprehend the human reaction. To them, this was just a minor event, a necessary casualty. They barely acknowledged the message from Earth, denouncing the attack, pleading for explanation, for justice. They only scoffed, indifferent, unmoved by the intensity of Earth's response. But Earth's leaders were anything but indifferent. In hidden chambers and shadowed rooms, they convened, eyes filled with a grim resolve. No one spoke for long moments. They didn't need to. The decision was clear in their expressions, in the tightness of their jaws, the unflinching determination in their stares. The Galactic Council had taken an innocent life, and there would be consequences. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to solid voices, and then finally to a decision. The ancient fleet. Earth had never intended to wake it, a relic from a different era, a weapon forged in the darkest days of humanity's history. Most people didn't even know it existed. But those who did spoke of it with awe, with fear, and with reverence. It was powerful, deadly, and dormant, buried deep, preserved for a time of true need, a time when humanity would be willing to risk everything. That time had come. Orders were issued in quiet urgency, communications secure and coded. Across the globe, people prepared, each in their own way. The leaders watched as a select group of pilots, chosen not just for skill but for their willingness to sacrifice, stepped forward. Young, old, some already legends in their field, some fresh from the academy, they all understood what they were being called to do. They didn't flinch. They didn't ask questions. They simply nodded, solemnly accepting the burden and honor. The fleet lay dormant, hidden within a massive underground facility beneath a forgotten mountain range. And then, one by one, the ships hummed to life, the glow of their engines casting eerie shadows on the walls. The pilots took their seats, gripping controls that felt both ancient and advanced. The air was charged, thick with a sense of inevitability. They weren't just fighting for justice. They were fighting for the future, for the right to exist without fear of random, senseless violence from an indifferent galaxy. And when the final preparations were complete, a command echoed through their helmets. Launch! It was one word, yet it carried the weight of every person on Earth, every ounce of grief and anger, every cry for justice and demand for retribution. It was a call to arms that no human could ignore, a call that would resonate throughout the stars. As the fleet rose, breaking through the Earth's atmosphere, the world below watched in silence. They knew that this was no ordinary mission. This was a message, a declaration that humanity would not bow, would not cower, and would not forget. The Galactic Council had taken something precious, irreplaceable. Now Earth would respond with a force they could not possibly ignore. The leaders watched their screens as the ancient fleet broke free from Earth's atmosphere, each ship in perfect formation, gleaming against the vast black of space. This was Earth's answer, its defiance against the Galactic Council's cruelty, a testament to the resilience and rage that had united every soul on the planet. These ships, relics of a time when humanity first reached for the stars, were no ordinary fleet. They had been crafted in an era of fierce conflict, each vessel equipped with systems that even today were unmatched. Only the best had been summoned to pilot them, and each pilot knew they weren't just operating a machine, they were wielding the will of Earth itself. Inside the cockpits, the pilots felt the silent, ancient hum of the engines beneath their hands, the low, pulsing energy that signaled readiness. Each one knew the significance of this moment. They had trained for years, some for an entire lifetime, but now they were part of something far greater. There was no turning back. This wasn't just a mission, it was a reckoning, a line drawn in the stars. Humanity had faced loss before, but nothing like this, and the Galactic Council's indifferent arrogance had made the choice clear. As the fleet drew closer to the Council's territory, the pilots received updates from mission control, strategic briefings, last-minute intel, and most importantly, words of encouragement from the people back home. Messages poured in from every corner of Earth, voices of hope, sorrow, and steely resolve. Bring them justice. For the lost child. These messages weren't just words, they were fuel, a reminder of why each pilot had strapped in, willing to put their life on the line. And they felt it, the burden of millions, carried in the metal frames of their ships, each pulse of the engine a heartbeat in sync with Earth's own. The Galactic Council's forces received the first signs of Earth's arrival, detecting the ancient fleet just before it crossed into their guarded space. Initial scans confused their systems. These ships didn't match any known models. Advanced, yet unmistakably old, and unlike anything the Council had prepared for. A few Council officials dismissed it, scoffing at Earth's feeble attempt at retribution, but their confidence quickly turned to unease as they observed the ship's power. The Council had always thought of Earth as insignificant, too young to be a threat. But the readouts flashing across their monitors told a different story. These vessels held capabilities that far exceeded their own defenses. The Council's admirals sent out warnings, ordering their own fleets to intercept, but the pilots of the ancient fleet moved with precision, effortlessly evading their attempts. They operated as one, guided not just by skill but by purpose, with instincts honed to respond to the Council's every move. The Council's defenses were formidable, but they weren't prepared for this level of coordinated resistance. The ancient fleet advanced, undeterred, cutting through the lines of alien ships with lethal efficiency, as if they were slicing through the very fabric of the Council's arrogance. On Earth, the mission control room was silent, each update from the pilots monitored with bated breath. This wasn't a battle for conquest, it was a battle for recognition, for justice. And as the fleet pushed further into Council space, Earth's leaders couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. Their fleet was no longer a hidden relic, it was a force to be reckoned with, one that demanded respect, a reality that the Galactic Council could no longer deny. In the Council's command chambers, voices rose in panic. They had never seen ships so relentless, so ruthlessly efficient. The humans, these creatures they had once dismissed, were pushing them to the brink, forcing them to acknowledge that Earth was no longer beneath them. The Council members looked at one another, alarm in their eyes, as their defensive lines collapsed, one by one. The fear they had always instilled in others now turned inward, a foreign, unfamiliar sensation that left them reeling. But the pilots of the ancient fleet were focused, unshaken by the Council's fear or desperation. They had one goal, one purpose, and they pressed forward with unwavering resolve, pushing the Council's forces further back, relentless in their pursuit. For them, this was more than just a battle, it was an answer to an unspeakable wrong, a response to a galaxy that had viewed humanity as nothing more than an inconvenience. The Council had brought this upon themselves. The pilots knew it, and so did Earth. There was no room for mercy, no time for negotiation. This was justice, and it would be delivered without hesitation. As the fleet advanced, it was clear that the Galactic Council's arrogance had blinded them. They had underestimated humanity, misjudged Earth's will to defend its own, and now, they were witnessing the true strength of a united planet. This was not the end of a conflict, it was the beginning of a new era, one where Earth would not only be remembered but respected, where humanity's message would echo through the stars. As Earth's ancient fleet closed in on the Galactic Council's stronghold, A tense silence fell over both sides, broken only by the quiet exchanges between pilots and mission control. They had breached the Council's inner territory, a place thought to be untouchable, where no outsider had ever dared to tread. And here they were, not as guests or diplomats, but as avengers, carrying the weight of a civilization's fury. Each pilot knew that there would be no retreat, no backing down until the Council understood the full extent of humanity's resolve. The Council's defensive fleet scrambled into action, interceptors launching with desperate haste, filling the space around them in a chaotic attempt to halt Earth's advance. But the ancient fleet moved with a seamless, terrifying precision, each ship carving a path as though it were a blade through water. Their weapons systems were decades, even centuries ahead of what the Council was prepared to face. Shield technology that could absorb blasts, weaponry calibrated to exploit the weaknesses in the Council's ships. Every feature of the fleet had been designed for one purpose: overwhelming superiority. The first wave of Council forces faltered, unable to match the ferocity of Earth's offensive. The pilots, trained not just in battle tactics but in the art of reading their enemy, anticipated every move, predicting shifts in formation, pinpointing weaknesses with a deadly accuracy that left Council commanders bewildered. Communications across the Council's channels crackled with confusion, their admirals issuing orders that were as panicked as they were futile. The Council's forces, long accustomed to easy victories, found themselves unraveling before an enemy that had been dismissed as primitive. One by one, Council ships buckled under the assault. Flames erupted, hulls fractured, and lifeboats scattered as crew members abandoned vessels in desperation. For the Council, this wasn't just a battle, it was a nightmare, an unanticipated, brutal reckoning that shattered their perception of control. The humans, they realized with mounting horror, were not here to negotiate. They had come to deliver judgment, a judgment as cold and relentless as the void of space itself. The Council's leaders watched in silence from their fortified chambers, unable to process what they were seeing. They had underestimated humanity, viewing Earth as a planet of inconsequence, a mere footnote in the galaxy's history. But now, confronted by the sheer power and purpose of the ancient fleet, they saw their mistake. The humans were not here to be dismissed. They were here to demand respect, to exact a price for the life that had been taken. Within the cockpit of each Earth ship, the pilots felt the gravity of the moment. They weren't just soldiers. They were symbols of Earth's undivided spirit, representing families, friends, and the memory of the child who had been taken. This was more than vengeance. It was a declaration of Earth's place in the galaxy, a message that humanity would not bow, not be subjugated. They fought not just with skill but with heart, each maneuver, each strike fueled by the unity and purpose of an entire world. In the midst of the chaos, one of the Council's most powerful ships emerged, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything else in the fleet, its hull bristling with weapons, its engines glowing with the energy of a miniature sun. It was a final line of defense, a vessel feared even among the Council's own ranks, known for having obliterated entire fleets single-handedly. The Council's leaders watched as it entered the fray, their last hope to turn the tide, to remind the galaxy of their strength. They believed this ship would end the human threat, finally extinguishing the spark of rebellion. But Earth's fleet was prepared. The pilots had anticipated this move, had studied the schematics and weak points of every known Council warship. The massive vessel loomed, its weapons charging, but the ancient fleet was ready. With strategic precision, the pilots coordinated their attack, focusing on the points of vulnerability, a tactical approach that showed not just their mastery of battle but the depth of their resolve. The confrontation was fierce, the Council's ship unleashing barrages of energy beams and missiles, filling the void with flashes of light and thunderous explosions. But Earth's fleet was unyielding, weathering the assault, absorbing the blows, and returning fire with ruthless efficiency. Piece by piece, the Council's ship began to falter, its shields flickering, its hull buckling under the relentless pressure. In a final, coordinated maneuver, Earth's ships delivered the decisive blow, breaking through its defenses, rendering the behemoth vessel powerless. Silence settled over the battlefield as the Council's last hope crumbled, leaving only the remnants of a once dominant fleet drifting, defeated. The Galactic Council, once an emblem of control and superiority, was reduced to scattered fragments, their arrogance shattered in the face of Earth's retribution. The ancient fleet held its position, victorious, not needing to gloat or celebrate. Their mission was clear, to make a statement, and they had done so with resounding finality. For the Council, this was a reckoning they would never forget, a moment etched into the annals of galactic history, a reminder that humanity was not to be trifled with. And for Earth, this was the ultimate vindication, proof that they would stand unbowed, a force that even the mightiest powers of the galaxy could not suppress. The final remnants of the Council's fleet drifted aimlessly, flickering lights marking the last vestiges of their once mighty armada. Earth's ancient fleet held its ground, unwavering, waiting for the message to be fully absorbed. From the Council's vantage point, the truth was undeniable. Their empire, one that had dominated for centuries, had been humbled by a single, determined force, a planet they had dismissed as insignificant. The Council's leaders sat in stunned silence, a heavy realization settling over them as they confronted the consequences of their actions. Across Earth's fleet, a message went out to the Council, clear and uncompromising. "This is Earth's answer," it declared, words that reverberated across every channel, piercing through the silence left by battle. The Council's leaders watched, feeling the weight of those words, the raw finality they carried. They had thought themselves untouchable, beyond reproach, but now, faced with Earth's strength, their hubris had been shattered. In their chambers, some Council members pleaded for negotiation, their voices uncharacteristically subdued, but the time for diplomacy had long passed. This wasn't a skirmish they could sweep under the rug or resolve with hollow promises. Earth had come to them with a purpose, with a demand for justice that could not be bargained away. And now, that demand hung over the Council like a storm, unavoidable and absolute. Among Earth's leaders, there was no sense of triumph, no revelry in victory. They hadn't come for glory but to make a statement, to show the galaxy that humanity would not stand idle while its people were harmed. And they had made that statement, loud and clear. Every soul on Earth, every grieving family, every silent mourner, knew that the Council had been shown the cost of their actions. Humanity had stood up not just for themselves but for the dignity of every life they held dear. The Council, once imperious and unyielding, now faced a reality they had never prepared for. They looked upon Earth's fleet, seeing in it not just ships but the embodiment of resilience, of unity forged through loss and purpose. The Council's members exchanged glances, each of them now painfully aware that Earth was no longer beneath their notice. They had tried to break humanity's spirit, but instead, they had only awakened its strength. Slowly, one by one, Council representatives lowered their heads, a silent admission of defeat. They had no choice but to accept the new order, to recognize that Earth was now a force within the galaxy, a power that had earned respect through action, through unyielding resolve. The fear that had once driven other worlds to submit to the Council's will now loomed over the Council itself, a reversal they could never have anticipated. Messages began to filter in from across the galaxy. Planets, colonies, and distant outposts, all had been watching, witnessing Earth's stand. They saw in humanity's defiance a spark of hope, a reminder that even the most powerful could be held accountable. Earth's victory sent ripples across the stars, reshaping alliances, shifting perceptions, inspiring others to stand against the Council's tyranny. For the first time, the galaxy saw that unity was possible, that there was strength in conviction, and that Earth had set a new standard for courage. As Earth's fleet began its journey home, the pilots felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They hadn't just fought for a cause, they had defended a principle, showing that the bonds of humanity were unbreakable, that the life of a single child held weight even in the vastness of the universe. The Council had taken that child's life, and in doing so, they had forged a purpose in every pilot, every leader, every citizen of Earth. It was a purpose the Council would never forget, a reminder etched into the very fabric of their empire. The fleet's return to Earth was met with silence, not the silence of grief, but of reverence, of pride. The people watched as the ships touched down, carrying with them the weight of victory, the memory of loss, and the unspoken promise that Earth would always protect its own. Humanity had faced the galaxy, unyielding, and had emerged unbroken. They had proven that they were more than just a footnote in history. They were a force that could not be silenced. And as Earth's leaders looked to the stars, they knew this was only the beginning.